We had sale agreed at £700,000 while we had £1,000 in our bank account. But we knew from the network that we could raise the investor funds for it.
We're going to be looking for investors, even if you've got money. You need to be looking for investors for the future deals. And that was something we worked really hard on from day one. And it paid huge dividends.
It's about £200,000 profit after tax.
£200,000 profit for one property after tax. Amazing. It's Simon Zutshi here, and in this educational video, I'm really pleased to be interviewing two of my mastermind graduates, John and Bronwen Vearncombe. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Simon. How are you doing?
Well, morning for me, not so morning for you. We'll talk about that later. I'm delighted to be interviewed. And this is a series of interviews we're doing about people who are about 10 years on their project. I think you're about 8 or 9 years on from your property journey, but you've achieved such amazing results. I wanted to interview to inspire you. Tony Robbins has got a great saying that most people overestimate what they can do in a year and massively underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And you guys have achieved amazing things. So first of all, do you want to tell everyone where you are?
Yes.
Yeah, at the moment, we are in Darwin in Australia. So we're out here
amazing.
because there's an event called the World Solar Challenge where solar cars drive from Darwin to Adelaide. And we're going to be volunteering for the team that organises this as a volunteer to make sure that the BFAS teams don't cheat on the way and things like that. So yeah, we've got the time, we've got the opportunity, and we said, yes, we'll do it.
Fantastic. And let's talk about that, because obviously you've done really well in your property, you're creating a lot of income. But I know that when you joined Mastermind, first of all, one of the reasons you wanted to have all this property was not so much for the money, but for the time and particularly the travel. So you do a lot of travel. So let's talk a little bit about that first. How long are you in Australia for, John?
We're here we've been here since the beginning of October, and we'll be leaving 6th of December. So over 2 months. We're taking 2 months and a bit out to travel around. We flew to Brisbane to see some friends, drove up here. That takes a little while. We'll be obviously driving down and around. So yeah, two and a bit months.
And lots of people wouldn't think that's possible, because they think when you get into property, surely you've got to be there to manage your properties. But actually, that's not the way you should do it. That's not what we teach, obviously. And you've done it exactly what we said. You've set it up so you can do things remotely. You've got people, letting agents and people are managing your properties for you, so you can actually enjoy the money that you're making from the properties, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. That was always our mantra right from day one, because we were working full time. We didn't have the time to manage our properties. And we were creating HMOs. So of course, that's even more time consuming. So it was relatively easy for us just to say, we're not going to have anyone in it. We're not going to manage any of it. We'll have plenty of people doing things that need to be done on the ground.
I see. I was trying to be as lazy as possible, so that, in other words, if I don't need to do anything, I don't want to do it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I think a lot of people, when they're investing in property, because they're trying to make income, they worry, well, if I pay a letting agent, that means I'm not making as much as I could. It's going to take me longer to reach my goal of financial independence. But obviously you did it very, very quickly, despite having full-time jobs and despite using other people to manage properties for you. So why don't we start by what you were both doing before you came on Mastermind, and why did you decide to do Mastermind?
Well, I'd been 21 years in Lloyd's Bank, so a career banker. And it was that point when I was told I couldn't take my pension till I was 67 that I thought, wow, there's no way I'm working to that age. I left the bank and joined the NHS and thought that might be a way out, but my goodness, no. Long hours, long commutes. And John, you were commuting to London as well from Hampshire.
Yeah. So when we started, I had a 2-hour commute each way from home into London and back in the evening. And Bronwen had an hour and a half commute from home to the Isle of Wight and back each. So an hour and a half each way. So that on top of a 9-to-5 job, we obviously had no time to do anything that we didn't absolutely need to do. And so I suppose because we had full-time jobs, we weren't reliant on the income from day one, which meant that we could afford to pay other people to do stuff and wait until that had built up before making the plunge to say, fine, we give up our day jobs, our corporate lives, and focus entirely on the property business.
Yeah. So if you're working full time, I know you've got kids as well, and you've got a big commute as well. A lot of people would have used that as an excuse. Oh, I couldn't possibly do this. But I really admire the way you guys actually, you got fully committed, not just interested in property, you got really committed. And the time you did have, obviously used very well, you focused. And I know there was some short-term sacrifice for a couple of years. Let's talk about that, because a lot of people, they want these results, but they're not prepared to put the time and effort in, are they?
No. Well, I think the great thing about both of us doing Mastermind together was that we understood that commitment that was required. A lot of our friends maybe didn't, because we didn't really have a social life for a couple of years. We gave up a lot of stuff that we would have done in our sort of social time. And we used to wake up much earlier before work, do some work, sometimes have my coaching calls at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then in the evening as well. So we would make that time available. And we both had slightly different roles, so we try and manage that between the two of us, so that I could be doing the viewings, John would do some of the back office, working out, is this going to be good enough? Then he would view the property the second time. So we built a sort of bit of a process around it.
I think we also had the ability to believe in ourselves, to believe it was possible, and therefore believe that it was a short-term sacrifice. It wasn't building something that we're going to need to be doing for the next 10, 20 years, that actually in 2 or 3 years' time, we'd be over the hump. We'd have broken the back of what was needed to be done to give us the time. And that certainly gave me the courage to say, okay, we'll do this. We'll put our social lives on hold for a couple of years, because what it'll give us in the future is worth it. And that's the balance I guess everybody's got to make. But for us, it was definitely that balance. And
definitely knowing what you've done over the last few years, you're certainly making up for that time that you invested in the early days, right? And so I know you focused on HMOs because it's one of the best strategies to give a really high, good cash flow. Do you want to share what there was, because obviously you smashed the target that we set in the first year. Do you want to show what your first year results were doing HMOs? Then we'll talk about some of the other things you've done afterwards.
Yeah. Well, when we were on that stage, top performers, we went back to that presentation recently, didn't we? We were about between 60 and 70,000 pounds of income. Plus we had a big project on the go that was going to create huge value. And that was our first big deal of converting a house to 6 flats. So we'd already started that. So in our first year, we'd got, I think, 4 HMOs. We then went on to do at least 2 more. 3 more, but we started to do bigger deals and do some conversions. So that gave us a bit of extra capital. That was our aim.
It's a very simple fact that we had some seed capital from our house when we started, so that bought the first couple of deals from that. Then we started using other people's money. So our third HMO was actually entirely funded by investors. And so then it's a case of, well, where do we get money from? Didn't really want to be using investors' money long term, because long-term relationships like that kind of go wrong far too often, because your desires diverge.
Yes.
So that was the reason for doing a capital generation project, to say, fine, let's see if we can do these capital generating projects, so that we do a project, get a lump of capital, that goes into the next HMO, with enough left over to do the next capital project, so that we could sort of be creating to buy the rental properties.
Great.
That was the strategy.
Just to recap that straight. So obviously you had some of your own money at first, remortgaging your own home, and that's obviously the best way. That's how most people start. But that's going to run out at some point. So then you use investors' money. Then you start doing some capital projects that give you big chunks of cash that you can use to put into projects, and also use to actually pay investors back as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So obviously a lot of people are familiar with HMOs, but then you moved into blocks of flats. So let's talk about how you were starting to move them, and in particular the social housing aspect, because I think that's a really important thing in these days that a lot of people want to know about. So let's talk about that.
Do you want to know how we got into it? Because we got into it by chance.
Yes, let's talk about
which
that.
Actually is something really important about recognizing opportunities when they come along. So we've done this first block of flats and we saw another conversion opportunity. There's quite a lot about that in terms of how we got it. But essentially, we were buying this big property with the idea of converting it to 10 flats. And we're going, okay, it's going to take maybe 6 months a year to get planning permission for the conversion. We're going to have a 12-month bridging loan, which is expensive to service during that time. So what do we do to insulate ourselves from the cost of the bridging loan? And we happened to have met, looking at another property, a chap who had a pub and had some rooms and let the rooms out. And Bronwen kept in contact with him. So one of Bronwen's great skills, keeping in contact with people. And they're talking to him one time, and he said, well, I could let those rooms out for you. And we're going, really? And so
26 rooms.
Yeah, 26 bedrooms in this building. And so we showed him around one Monday morning, and we're showing around, looked at the first room, and yeah, this will be fine, this is good. And his phone went, and he answered and said, hello, Griffin Inn, I'm terribly sorry, we're full. 5 minutes later, the phone goes again, terribly sorry, we're full. I'm thinking, maybe he's telling the truth here.
So we gave him 3 months. I think we gave him a 3-month trial period to come and work with us and see if it could work two-way. And he's the one that had the contacts with the council. So those were the people that he was housing in his pub, 5 rooms or something. And he built such a good relationship with the council that he said, well, look, if I could provide some more rooms. And they said, yeah. So 26 rooms suddenly filled up within a couple of weeks. It was amazing. So, and we still work with him now. So we had one guest house, we call it now, the guest house. We didn't do the planning. We've now got 5 guest houses with over 90 rooms. When we first got them, some were bought through a purchase lease option. 2 are very long leases, so we don't own all of them.
Yeah, so it's again, a rent if you like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. No, it's a long lease.
We've got a couple properties released, but to go back to the original property, so on the original plan was to convert it to flats, and that was how we sold it to our investors. Because again, this is a property where, it was on. We had sale agreed at £700,000, while we had £1,000 in our bank account, but we knew from the network that we could raise the investor funds for it. So, kind of sadly, but it's been a positive story. We only own 40% of that property. It's still very good. So other investors own the other 60%. And when we did the numbers on the room rentals, suddenly going, okay, instead of this being a short-term policy for a year, this is actually something that could run long-term. And so we had to go back to our investors and say, this is what we're doing. This is what we found. What do you guys think? Do you think it's worthwhile giving this a longer term shot? And they looked at the numbers and thought, that looks really nice cash flow. Let's see what happens. So that's what we did. And Plan B very much became Plan A. And Plan A has become our major kind of investment strategy since then, as we've built that business from 26 rooms up to, at one point, I think it's 95 rooms. Yeah.
So, and that's a combination of properties you've purchased, long leases, and purchase lease options, where you're controlling the property but don't own it, and you're getting this. And one of the things I want to pick up on is, obviously, you've used lots of different strategies we taught you, but also you really embrace what we teach about networking. And obviously that gentleman who put the tenants in for you, that's someone you met through networking. A lot of your investors you met through networking. And I'm a great believer in, your net worth is your network. So let's talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people don't believe they're going to find people who've got money. But my belief is, well, if you have a good deal that makes a lot of money, it's money for you, but also money to pay investors. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, you used to say this to us all the time, and I love people, and I love talking to people about the opportunities. And I think people soon learned that from our first couple of deals, we could share with them the return on investment that we were getting on those 2 deals. So people went, oh, okay, that works. But I think the best investors for us are investors that we'd already known before, who are sort of friends, business friends and friends. And they've sort of come on board as long-term investors, and they stayed with us. And then there's the other investors who perhaps, maybe had money to put into a particular deal, and they thought they'd test us out a bit. So we do the first deal on a short-term basis. And then they say, oh, well, I've got a bit more money. And you used to tell us this all the time. We were like, oh no, I bet that doesn't happen. But it absolutely does.
Absolutely does.
So somebody invested, I think it was £30,000. The next thing he comes in, he wants to JV with us for like 100. And we're like, oh,
yeah.
do we want that? You know, JV is very different.
Yeah.
So
it is very different, yes.
But literally, yeah, the variety of people who have invested with us have been a long-term friend we've known for 10 years, but didn't understand how much money they had in the bank account.
Yeah.
The gas fitter who came to service a boiler one day, was employed by British Gas. People introduced to us by, some people by our IFA said, look, I can't do anything formally, but have a chat with these people because I think they might be interested.
Yeah.
So it is all those totally different strands of meeting coming across people. And yeah, I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small percentage of people who actually say yes, but actually you don't need that many. And we did have a time when we had more people coming to us wanting to lend us money than we wanted to borrow.
Yeah. And I think it's important that you'd educated yourself, you knew how to find great deals, you could prove that these are making money. So, you know, these are good deals. You're getting people to invest. You've got to be very careful when using other people's money. And as you quite rightly said, John, the key here is people often think, oh, I don't know anyone with money. Well, you don't know who's got money because it's not something that most people talk about. It's kind of private, but the point is you want to tell everybody what you do. You're sharing the opportunities, you said, Bronwen, and there will be some people, if you let people know what's going on, who gravitate towards you and who are interested. And if you look after people and have a small amount of money at first to test you out, often they have a lot more. They're not going to give you all their money straight away. So it's all these things we've taught you, they absolutely work. And what you've done, you've just applied what we've taught you very, very well.
You've taught us very well, very, very well.
Well, you've been students, always helps.
So it's a win-win.
So you've got the HMOs, then you've got the blocks of flats you're using for the short term. And by the way, the great thing about short-term accommodation with the council is, well, you know, they pay a higher rent to you, so you make more money, but they're paying a lot less than they would if they're putting people up in local B&Bs and hotels. So it's a win-win for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this strategy is about emergency housing. So this is where councils need to place people, and quite often families, into accommodation very quickly. So it could be fire, flood, it could be homelessness, it could be a number of different things. And this is where we can provide really good quality homes for them, as opposed to them being thrown into a Premier Inn or a smelly bed and breakfast down the road.
Yeah.
And that's where we've really adapted our strategy to support the council in what they want and need. And homelessness, we have one property dedicated to street homeless, which is quite unusual for investors to want to do. But we've worked with the council to share the burden and support what can work really well.
Yeah. I think there's a really important point there to make as well. I mean, property is a people business, and it sounds like you've built a very good, trusting, working relationship with the local council. And when you do a good job, people want to work with you more, don't they?
Absolutely, yes. And Colin has really led that relationship with the council.
Yeah.
And worked with them to figure out what kind of accommodation they're looking for, and come to us and said, well, this is what we think we need. And we do the maths and we say, okay, yeah. So one of the guest houses literally spent 230,000 refurbing it this year to change the layouts to make sure that everything has an ensuite bathroom. Some of the units now have to have 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, because that allows the council to house bigger families.
Yeah.
So we've got that whole range, and that's kind of been led by the council, by your customer saying, what is it that you want?
Yeah.
And having the courage to say, I have the cash flow to actually step in and provide it. Yeah. And that has really augmented the whole business model. And so we've actually reduced the number of units that we now provide, but actually they are much more aligned with what the council want. So the return's actually better.
Our turnover's increased.
Yeah.
Well, you use that word there, business, and I think you have always treated this as a business rather than a hobby. And businesses, you look at what do your customers want and you serve those needs, right? So that's a really important tip for everyone who's investing in properties. Think about who your target market, who's your customer, who's the clients, and give them what they need. And if you do that, you will always be able to fill your properties.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and the flip side, of course, is the administration and all the things that you need to learn and understand from a safety point of view.
Yeah,
that's probably where we come in, as opposed to the person that's managing it. Is that we've got that responsibility, and we have to systemize it and make sure that we're on top of everything. That's really important.
Yes, you must
so
do things properly and professionally. Yeah,
absolutely,
definitely.
absolutely.
And let's talk about that just to help everyone put it into context. If you can remember the numbers, that first property you bought, that you turned into this kind of short-term emergency housing. You're saying you offered on that property, and at the time you had £1,000 of your own money in the bank, so you had to use other people's money. And I know that's a very profitable. So how much is that one? How much did you buy it for? How much did you spend it, and how much does that one property now make for you?
So the purchase price was 700,000, and it's now, well, the accounts from last year, because it's a JV with other people. It has its own limited company. It has its own set of accounts, and last year the pre-tax profits were just shy of £250,000.
Wow. For one property.
One property.
The value is 1.1 million, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Just goes show. And because I like talking about mega deals, one deal that can replace your income. And I know not all of that is yours because of the way that was structured. But if you and obviously if you've done it in a different way, a later property, I know you've just done loans rather than joint ventures. And as you quite rightly said, Bronwen, there's a big difference between a loan and joint venture. Joint venture, going to business people, you need to know them better, etc. So and there's a time for that, absolutely. But also loans are good, where once you've paid the person back, you have 100% of the equity, and you don't share it. But almost £250,000 of profit before tax, and let's even take the tax into account. That's probably going to be what, 25%. So let's say actually maybe 100.
It's about £200,000 profit after tax.
£200,000 profit from one property after tax. Amazing. And that was a deal you did just at the end of your mastermind year.
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. And then obviously you've got more of those. When you've got something that works, you cookie cutter it. So you do it again and again and again. So you've got five of those properties now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, so you've done HMOs, you've done these kind of properties that are being used for the emergency housing. And then you've got one other thing I want to talk about, which is your international property investing. Tell us all about that. That's really exciting.
Oh, yeah. Well, that wasn't planned.
That wasn't planned at all.
So having been around the world, I mean, John did the clip around the world yacht race in 2017. So that was like 3 years after we started Mastermind.
And John, can I ask a question? Would you ever have been able to do that if you were still working?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, it was an opportunity. I know it was scary. It cost £50,000 to go around the world. Yeah. And we were still quite new into our property journey. And it's a case of, is this sensible to take a year out this soon, when everything is still so new and so fresh?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, yes, we managed to raise to find the funds for me to do it. Bronwen also then came around the world flying from port to port and doing other things in between time while I was sailing. But again, like everything we try and do in property, same with this, what's your plan B? If plan A doesn't work, what do you do? So if things start to go wrong, well, Bronwen could always fly back to the UK and sort of get close to the action again. And if needed be, next time I came into port, if it was that bad, I could always leave the race and go back as an ultimate, if needs must.
Yeah, it was a good test. It was a good test for our business to see if it would stand on its own 2 feet. And the people that we were using, we didn't employ anyone, but our agents, we're testing them, aren't we, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So a bit risky, but we did it. We did buy a property during that year, which John didn't want to do, but I sort of led on that to begin with. So, we thought, well, if we can do that, we can do anything really. So we came back.
Not only are you managing property, but as long as you've got an internet connection, you actually managed to buy a property while John was traveling around the world on a boat.
Yes, and do a remortgage as well. And that was a bit tricky in New Zealand in the middle of the night.
Or in China.
I was walking down the road trying to get a signal to do a remortgage. Anyway, so that was a real test for us. And then when we came back, we did a bit more systemizing our business and making sure that it was a bit more robust. And then we took off again, and we went to Australia for 9 months, and then we came home again, and then we We went to Africa in 2020. And of course, we know what happened that year. We ended up staying in Africa. We're volunteering for wildlife conservation, which was my big reason why. We were aiming to do 3 months. We stayed out there for 6 months because COVID. We then shipped our car out to Africa, traveled across Africa during 2021, and ended up in a place called Zanzibar in Tanzania, which we fell in love with, and did all these sort of, ticking the boxes that we could live here. This would be nice. Would it be possible? And long story short, we're building 9 apartments out there and our own holiday home.
Yeah. So the plan. Well, when we got there, everywhere we'd kind of been looking for, is this a place we'd like to have as an overseas bolt hole where we can have an overseas base? And we'd looked in Darwin, we'd looked in Queensland in Australia, we'd looked in South Africa, we looked in Namibia. And when we got to Zanzibar, it was a case of, actually, yes, there's all these things. And yes, we can buy it in our own names. It doesn't have to be with the local majority owner.
Yeah.
And so on. And so it's a case of, actually, this is going to be a really good place to go. But then when we found, trying to balance the kind of house that we'd like, or with the amount of money we were willing to leave in Zanzibar, it didn't quite work up in the right balance. So then talking to the agent who was trying to sell us the one house, and we just said, okay, well, if we did these things, and because this is copying what other people had already been doing, buy a plot, build more than one property on it, sell them off, make a profit to augment what we would be spending, or to part pay for the house. And he came with this he said, okay, well, try this plot, try this plan. We improved it. And so actually the profit from the 9 flats should entirely pay for our house out there. Right. So we'll get our own money back out again, and we'll get a house for free.
So let's step back a bit. So you're buying a plot that's big enough to build a house for you and these 9 flats, and you'll sell the 9 flats, take out all the money you put in, so you have no money left in, and you'll have this whole house paid off, completely left over for you. That's amazing.
Yeah, we sold 4 off plan already. They're nearly finished, and that's enough to build our house. So we've still got 5 more, which will be additional. Well,
the 5 more will allow us to take all our money out, and actually even give us a bit of profit on the side.
Right. So you're selling some and retaining a few you're going to rent out?
No. The current plan is we'll sell all the flats.
Right. Okay.
Just because we want the capital back out to do some things on our home in England.
Yeah. Got it. Brilliant. And obviously you'll be offering that holiday home at favourable rates to friends and family, of course.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I've always wanted to go to Bangkok. It's one of the on the list.
I'm joking aside, it's a 4-bedroom house, so even if we're there, there's still 3 bedrooms spare. And I know our aim is exactly that. Friends and family come and visit us because we love it, and if we can share with other people, that's just lovely. Fantastic.
And how much time do you think you're going to spend between the UK and Zanzibar, or because I know you love traveling, right? You love sailing. So what do you think that's going to look like in the future? How much time are you going to spend?
Good question. I think we're going to try it out, see how it goes. And we've still got lots of things that we want to do, and possibly some more volunteering in different countries. So we'll still have that base. I would say during the winter would be particularly, during the UK winter, we'd be out there or in another country. With family now, commitments, my son just got married recently and they've got a baby. We need to just touch base and be around a bit more, rather than 2 years in Africa was quite a long time to be away.
So it's going to be a case of we'll make it up as we go along, because we can't answer that question. We don't know how it's going to feel. We don't know how easy it's going to be with family relationships, but it just gives us such a wonderful opportunity. It's just about giving us choices, giving us opportunities. Yeah, choice and freedom, along with security of all that income coming in every month. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I don't know if we want to go into exact figures, but it's probably suffice to say, you're taking home probably
tens of thousands of pounds every single month, which is hundreds of thousands of pounds every year, thanks to the hard work you put in up front with your property investing.
We could be.
Yes.
And an awful lot of the money stays in the companies to, and as I said earlier, and we spent £250,000 on refurbing properties this year.
Yeah.
We've got one that's still going on. There is quite a big refurb to do next year. But next year we're definitely getting into that territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
our
there's a point,
turnover will be in the region of over £2 million next year. Just turnover. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for income there from the
absolutely. And obviously when you take out the company, you've got to pay tax, so there's an element to say you leave a certain amount in the company, you use that to make sure you've got a good cash buffer, you want to make sure you can do repairs and things and maintain those properties to the right standards. But a great position. I think it was about 8-9 years ago you started Mastermind?
Yeah,
2014.
2014 you started, okay. And so
9 years ago.
Almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years ago. Almost 10 years ago.
10 years since you started. Did you ever think you'd be doing what you're doing right now 10 years ago when you first started?
I didn't think we'd have had this much success. And I did think that we would have possibly got to the between 5,000 and 10,000 kind of free income per month to go and travel. I knew that was going to be possible. Timescales, I had no idea. I don't get me wrong, it's been a pretty rough ride at times. We've had projects go wrong. We've had JV partnerships go sour.
Yeah.
We've had sleepless nights. We've had all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we've done development as well, and you know how difficult that is. You know, we built 8 houses in Andover. You know, that was a tricky.
We're not going to repeat that one.
Strategy.
It's and just for everyone watching this, what we say, look, development can be great at the right time of your journey. But it's a totally different ball game to just buying a house and turning it into an HMO. There's so much more involved in development. And if you want cash flow, development's probably not the right thing to do because it swallows cash. But it can give you lots of cash. So at the right time, development can be absolutely fantastic. You've got to do it at the right time in your property journey, haven't you?
Yeah, you have. And on that particular one was joint. There were two separate joint ventures going on. We also got hit by COVID and that delayed sort of. Essentially, our big sales launch for the 8 houses was planned for Easter weekend 2020.
Oh, just when everything shut down.
Just when everything shut down. So we could not. So we had full development funding costs ongoing.
Yeah.
For an extra year, and it cost us hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
And you know, we did.
So there, yeah.
So I think,
so there were a lot of things that went wrong, and without that, it could have been great.
Yeah,
but
despite that, you've still done incredibly well. And I think it's easy. It's important to recognise we're not saying property investing is easy. There are challenges, there are problems, and you have to overcome those problems. And you know, I guess. What do you think's made you so successful? Because you have been ultra successful. And what are some tips you'd give people watching this? Maybe they're people who are not in property yet, or even people who may be on our mastermind program. They're trying to achieve the amazing results that you have. What are some tips you'd give people?
Yeah, well, I mean, diversification is important when you get to a certain point. So if you might be doing single lets or HMOs or leases or whatever, you know, don't just do that. Find something else that you can do alongside it that might be just extending your knowledge, but into something that may well give you that additional stream of income. That's one thing. You've probably got lots of.
A big one for me is risk management. When you start throwing around hundreds of thousands of pounds, that's a big risk.
Yes.
And you've got to understand the risks, understand your ways out. So, the one project that the development that went seriously wrong, we didn't have a plan B. And that's the only time I didn't have a plan B. And guess what? It went wrong. And there are other things where plan A hasn't worked, but I've always had plan B and plan C in place, so that actually you might not make the returns you wanted to, but it doesn't kill you.
Yeah. But the most important thing about that as well is that you you don't risk investors' funds. So with that deal, we paid back all our investors. Okay, so that was a priority. And then for us, it was then our own money or the way that we were managing it. So having options, choices.
So from a reputational point of view, the first people who get their money back are the investors, or the first people, the banks, because that, and then it has to be the investors, even if you end out of pocket.
Yes,
because
I've had some projects where that's happened, where things haven't quite worked, and the investors always got their money back. So important.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's such a critical thing to understand, and really annoys me when I see other people not doing that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the other thing is finding investors very, very early on. So I remember you saying in the first couple of months, we're going to be looking for investors, even if you've got money. You need to be looking for investors for the future deals. And that was something we worked really hard on from day one. And it paid huge dividends. And we even borrowed people's pension funds from a SAS point of view, SIPs and SASs, which worked really well for us. And then that knocks on, doesn't it? Because people then know other people, they bring investors to you. And we, as John said, we had more money than we needed. And that's a great thing, because you can choose the right project, the right investor. Because as you know, JVs don't only work for sophisticated investors. But yeah, that's another tip, I think, that we did well.
Yeah, and I think just having the courage to take action, to go. So we've sold one of our HMOs in the entire journey, and that was the very first one we bought. We bought it, was a great success. No, not particularly, not financially, but what we learned from doing it. Yes, we learned lots on the course, and all the theory, but when you actually do it for real, and you've then got to go through the process of getting your license, you've got to go through the process of your mortgages and everything else, and you then understand that it does work, that doing the reality just is worth so much in terms of experience. That it means that you've then got the courage and the confidence to go on and do other things. And then when it gets to the stage of like you were saying, right, is it during Westfinder or was on graduate, just to add a zero to the end of the deal.
Yeah, indeed.
You can do that because actually you've got the experience. Yeah. And you've got the courage to do it.
I think that first property is probably the hardest property most people do, because it's, well, does this really work? And only once you've actually done it and experienced yourself, so, oh yes, it not only does it work, but it works for me. Because people sometimes look at other people, well, they can do it. I don't know if I could do it. But once you personally experience it, the problem is a lot of people never get to that first property because fear holds them back, or limiting beliefs or whatever. And let's be honest here, your first property is probably not going to be your best deal, and that's okay, because of all the other the intangible benefits you get of that self-belief that I can do this.
Absolutely.
And then obviously then you, as you've quite right, you've then actually sold that first deal because you can reinvest that money in a better deal in the future, but it got you going, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly that.
It was an existing HMO as well, so it wasn't hugely difficult, but it wasn't the best return on investment when we started to convert properties and create HMOs.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And it makes me really chuffed to see how well you've done, and that you're absolutely living your life. And not only are you traveling, but you're doing work for charities and they're volunteering and helping other people. And I think there's a great saying that springs to mind from the late, great Bob Proctor, who was one of my mentors. He said, if you want to help the poor, make sure you're not one of them. And the theory about fitting your own oxygen mask first before you help other people. And what you've done, you've financially fitted that financial oxygen mask. You're doing very, very well. But that gives you the time and the freedom to help other people. And so...
And the resources.
Yeah,
and the resources to help other people.
Absolutely. So long may that continue. Long may your travels continue. And I wish you safe travels and enjoy the trip, and I look forward to catching up when you get back. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure it's been truly inspiring to everyone watching this. And as ever, I'd encourage everyone to invest in knowledge, invest in skill. Thanks for watching. I do hope you got massive value from watching that inspirational case study. Hope you took lots of notes and start using some of the hints and tips in your property investing journey.
Now, if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and make sure you hit the bell icon so you'll get notified whenever we bring out new content and training that's going to help you be a more successful investor. If you got any comments, just list those below, and I'll come back and answer as many as I can. And by the way, there's going to be a link below for you to get some further training so you can find out how you can get the kind of results we've just been talking about in this interview. As ever, I encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill. See you in the next video we've lined up for you.